beef deal. Which countries did you make that deal with? What are the sources of the beef deal?
I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries, but they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef, and it's something that we need.
Federal officials announced the recall of nearly 30,000 pounds of raw beef imported from Argentina. The packages from a company called Corte Argentino sold to distributors and retailers in Florida and Texas.
Hey, the United States is not the only country that processes all sorts of meat items that could get you sick. It turns out imported beef from Argentina also problematic. Okay, this is a serious story. And as you saw in that video, Trump's imports of foreign beef, which he has said is meant to help lower the cost for consumers who are looking to purchase beef for their families, has actually blown up in his face in more ways than one. So bear with me, buckle up. I'm gonna walk you through this entire debacle. Some of you might not have any idea about what is going on, why the cost of beef is so high. And honestly, I think this story is a microcosm of a broader problem that we're experiencing in our economy, where we have essentially allowed our politicians to gut our economy. We don't make anything anymore. We don't care about our farmers. In fact, one of the biggest issues, the heart of this problem, is the fact that we don't have as much cattle as we used to. So we can't rely on our own beef here in the United States. So let's get into the details here. So Trump announced that he would temporarily pause US tariffs on foreign beef. He made this announcement last week, writing on Truth Social the following: that he announced that the US would allow up to 300,000 metric tons of product for ground beef to be imported tariff-free, and claimed that beef would be sold at 25% below current market rates, which I will admit are pretty high. And then look, Trump is right to point out the high price of beef. It's at record highs these days, and there are a few reasons why. This is a smaller reason, but I do want to mention it because it's worth mentioning. There's something known as screwworm, which sounds super gross because it is, but it's a disease that's impacting cattle. And as a result, cattle has to be put down because its meat is no longer safe. So screwworm has been an issue, but there's also another huge issue, a much bigger issue. The United States has spent years shrinking its cattle herd, which translates, of course, to lower supply of beef for US consumers. So the beef cow herd has declined by 8.6% since 2020 alone, in 6 short years. But I've got some more numbers for you according to the USDA. The US started the year with the smallest herd since the 1950s, about 86.2 million cattle and calves. Now, the cattle shortage has driven consumer beef prices to record highs, with ground beef selling for $6.89 a pound on average in July. And that was up 10% from a year ago, according to the Labor Department. So bringing in foreign beef was Trump's solution to this problem. Like, we've got limited supply, so why don't we just increase the supply? I report the news for a living, and one thing I never want to do is let one media outlet decide for me what the story is or which part of it matters. That's one of the reasons why I use Ground News. It's a website and app that brings reporting from across the political spectrum together in one place, but let me actually show you what that means. I can open basically any story and immediately see the bias distribution of the coverage. I can compare how outlets are writing their headlines, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns them. So instead of just reading a headline and moving on, I have context about where that information is coming from and how differently the same story is being presented. But one of my favorite features is the blind spot feed. It specifically surfaces stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely even covering at all, which is incredibly useful if you're trying to get outside of your own media bubble. And you can create custom feeds around the topics you actually care about, so you can personalize what you follow and want to see more of. That's why I genuinely love Ground News. It gives me more control over how I consume the media, and I think that's something all of us could use right now. Go to ground.news/TYT or just scan the QR code to get 40% off the Vantage plan. That's the same plan we use. That's ground.news/TYT. And typically that might make sense, But the problem is it doesn't address the underlying issue, which is the reduced number of cattle in the US, the inability to rely on ourselves when it comes to our own food supply. And so he decides, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and bring in Argentinian beef, okay? Now, that upset a lot of people, including our ranchers, including our farmers. We'll get to that in just a minute. But again, bringing in foreign beef is not going to fix the underlying problem here. It's just, it is de-incentivizing ranchers from increasing their herds. Because why would you do it? Why would you want to increase supply that's already increased? You want to, to some extent limit supply so you're at least making a profit off of selling beef. So it's just actually making the situation in the long term worse. And so let's actually hear from Casey Parker. This is the founder of the American Rancher Alliance, who explained how this all undermines American ranchers and cattle farmers. Take a look.
We're losing 66 farms and ranches a day right now, which is just absolutely insane. And there's no way that you're going to incentivize any rancher to be able to, afford or even be able to retain their heifers by undercutting them. And then if there's that 25% that he's taking off of that the consumers are not going to see that. They're going to see pennies, maybe, because it's all going to be captured by those big foreign packers and then the distributors and the retailers. It's not doing anything but undercutting the American ranchers.
What would you make of the argument that the herd still needs to catch up with demand, and this is a temporary solution to get beef prices down across the board for a large population of Americans who can't go to the grocery store and afford that beef?
I think the solution would be to cut exports by about 5% and then be able to keep our beef here in America and help us retain those cattle.
Yes, Casey, yes, cut the exports. I actually really love that idea. I wish I had thought of that myself, but she's absolutely right about that. And in fact, remember, Trump wants the foreign beef that's being imported here to be sold at 25%, at a 25% discount from the market rate, which sounds a lot like price fixing, doesn't it? I thought the right wing hated price fixing. I thought it distorted the market because it does. Price fixing, not good, bad. I actually totally disagree with price fixing, which is why when Kamala Harris was running, the way that she communicated about affordability made it seem like maybe she's considering price fixing. That's not what she was actually considering, but it was hard to make out what she was thinking at any given time. So let's just put that aside for now. But I totally agree with what Casey Parker said there. Now, there's another huge issue. Trump imports the foreign beef from Argentina. And then it turns out there's an issue with that foreign beef. We don't know the specifics per se, but it's been recalled. Let's get into the details on that. So Justin Tupper, the president of the US Cattlemen Association, points out that the imported meat might not be safe to eat. Take a look.
We live in a free market system where it's supply and demand. And right now, the demand is higher than the supply. And bringing in foreign beef that does not have to live up to the same standards or any of the things that we go by here in this country, we don't think will. One of two things will not bring down the price of beef in the store, and it's not going to help the ranchers to increase their herds. It takes 3 years once a calf is born for her to get into the production system to raise more beef to put back into the chain. So we definitely respectfully disagree that we don't think that bringing in this foreign beef is going to help at all. In the cattle industry, this is when most people are selling their calves. This is when the highest amount of cattle are going to market. We just opened the Mexican border. It just puts a lot of pressure on a market that has to operate by itself and independently. We do not want outside influences in there. Let supply and demand work. Make sure that we get to put the safest, best protein on the planet on the consumer's plate. And we want it to be labeled. That's another thing in the farm bill we're working on is MCOOL, trying to get this beef labeled so the consumer knows where it comes from.
Exactly where it's coming from.
Okay, we need to just briefly discuss what he referenced at the very tail end of that video when he mentions MCOOL. What is MCOOL? Why is he saying it has to do with labeling? Well, it's because it's the mandatory country of origin labeling. Doesn't it shock you how little information we get about the very food we put in our mouths, like to the point where you don't even know where the meat is coming from. That's insane. So again, MCOOL is the mandatory country of origin labeling. Currently, there's no labeling to indicate where beef is coming from. I think that's a problem. Now, Trump originally did not want to say where this imported foreign beef was coming from, but we were able to deduce, everyone was able to deduce that it came from Argentina. Now, back in October of 2025, Trump said that he was open to importing more beef from Argentina, specifically due to his friendship and alliance with the leader of Argentina, Javier Milei. Okay, great. So he authorized an additional 80,000 metric tons of lean beef imports from Argentina to come into the country this year, 2026. Now, as you heard in the first video we showed you in the segment, already 30,000 pounds of frozen beef from Argentina has been recalled in both Florida and the state of Texas. So it's unclear exactly why the beef was recalled, but keep in mind, like, these types of things don't just happen lightly. The recalls happen due to safety concerns. So there's something wrong with the beef. Regardless, it isn't really shocking, seeing as there's health and economic concerns with Argentinian beef. And if you're wondering, like, what are you talking about? Well, it turns out that the National Cattlemen's Beef Association noted to Trump back in October of last year, okay, so nearly a year ago, Argentina also has a history of foot and mouth disease, which is brought to the United States and could decimate our domestic livestock production. That's not good. Foot and mouth disease sounds pretty gross. And Trump was warned about this, but of course, he usually ignores the advice of informed individuals, opting for the corrupt or individuals who have bribed him, individuals who just happen to be his friends or family members. He'll listen to them, or if they're Israelis, of course. But when it comes to sound advice, including advice from members of his own cabinet, he'll totally ignore it. Additionally, China has rejected 22 tons of beef from Argentina after discovering that there was this antibiotic used in raising the cattle. It's known as chloramphenicol. And China's like, that's not good for our people. We don't want them consuming this. So we're gonna go ahead and ban the beef. It's an antibiotic that's actually been banned in food producing animals because it poses a severe health risk. So according to Straight Arrow News, the shipment originated from the RA Beef facility. It's a beef plant in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And the USDA data shows that the US does import beef from that very plant, the plant that China has rejected beef from, because they care about their population. They don't want their population to get sick by, eating this beef that's pumped with this antibiotic that will make you eventually resistant to antibiotics when you are prescribed antibiotics by your doctor for some ailment or some issue that you're having. China's like, no, we're not interested in that. Whereas Trump, I'd be shocked if he was fully aware of it, because the second you try to have a conversation with this guy and give him sound advice, his eyes glaze over. Like, where's the picture book? You didn't give me a children's picture book to understand what you're talking about here. It's unbelievable. So in 2016, China rejected a different shipment of beef for the same reason from a different beef plant, Eco Carnes. According to Clarin, an Argentinian news site, the US also imports beef from that plant, because of course we do. Of course we do. But you wouldn't know if you're consuming that Argentinian beef because we don't label it. So congratulations, Americans. Your government hates you. It's unclear where the recent shipment of rejected beef products is now, but the US would also reject it if it detected any level of this, antibiotic, as Chinese agriculture officials did. The USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service is tasked with testing agricultural products entering the US before they hit store shelves. Now, that's how things would theoretically work. But as you can imagine, I wouldn't put too much weight behind our government functioning the way that it's intended. Now, seeing the response to the ongoing, I never know how to say this word, cyclosporia outbreak? Yes, I did it. This doesn't really give me much hope in the USDA. I'm just keeping it very honest with you guys.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.